So what is the average circularity percentage error that you should aim for when you're calibrating your joysticks? This is a question that I get asked very frequently in my YouTube comments and in Discord. And I've said this before in other videos. I think there is a misconception that you should aim for a very low percentage, like trying to get as close to 0 as possible. And even though there are controllers that have this, such as the GullyKit KK3 Max that I have, if I do a circularity test here, you can see that it's 0%. Now, this further worsens the misconception that this is, like, you know, the end goal, the best controller ever, but it's really not. Actually, if you even look at the joystick, it's very difficult to show on camera, but you may think that I'm like at the edge right now, but I'm still able to move the controller further, even though it's at 0, or even though it's still on the edge. So this controller uses some kind of hardware mimicry to just force the limit, the barrier, to be at 0%. So it forces the circularity. And ultimately, this will result in issues in games. Again, I mentioned this in previous videos, is you're not just limiting the range, you're just moving slower in that specific direction. And if you look at stock controllers, you're going to see there are overshoots in the corners. And this is exactly what I've been saying every single time, is you want to mimic a stock controller or a stock circularity. And then that begs the question is, how does a stock circularity look like? Well, this is a controller that is unmodified. It's a DualSense Edge, and it has 8.3 and 8.4. It has overshoot in all 4 corners, but that's not the entire story. Like, I can pick any 2 joysticks that will have different results. So I need some kind of average, and that's that's why I bought 30 DualSense Edge joystick modules just for this video, so that I can experiment and see what the average is, and to see like what a range the calibrations lie in. And my ultimate goal with this test was just to finally answer the question is, okay, this is what you should aim for, and here is my proof. But in my test, I noticed that it's a bit more complicated than just this number. So this number alone, it doesn't tell the full story. I'll go over that, but if you don't care about all the details, I'm just gonna lay it out flat at the front. In the description, I have this Excel sheet. It has all my findings, like every circularity for all these pairs that I tested. And if you just care about the answer, I wrote it right here at the top. Again, remember, it's a sample test. If I pick a different sample or I get a larger sample, I'm going to get different results. So take it with a grain of salt. I got between 8.3 and 9%. That's where 50% of my values lied in from stock controllers. And with that, that's also my recommendation. If you get between 8.3 and 9%, in my opinion, you get about what you can expect from a stock circularity. The way I tested it, which it's also important, you're going to get different results if I test this here or if I test it on the DualShock calibration GUI. I tested everything on this website, and it measures or calculates the percentage just slightly different, so keep that in mind. And also what I did is I rotated in every direction, so clockwise and counterclockwise, several times until the number doesn't change anymore. So if I do it just once, I'm going to get 7.9. But if I'm always going to rotate it, it's going to keep increasing. And if I'm going the other direction, it's going to increase even more. And this is consistent with every joystick. So keep that in mind when you want to compare your number to my findings. Is the way I tested it is like an upper bound. I rotated in every direction several times until it does not increase anymore. So that's the first thing, is the number. 8.3 and 9%. That's not the full story. So the second thing is the symmetry. This pair, it's stock. I didn't even open these. These have the stock controllers. They're brand new. The only thing I did with them was test, and that's it. So no playtime whatsoever. Now, for some other joysticks that I tested, I'll quickly pull up the results here. For example, this one on pair number 13. This is, again, uncalibrated. It's stock. It came right out of the box. And these have terrible symmetry. So the right joystick here, it has a lot of overshoot on the top right, has less overshoot on the bottom right. It's still acceptable because there is at least some overshoot. If you look at the left one, it doesn't even reach the top. Now this is really bad. You're not moving to your fullest speed even if you're just going forward. So if you're like playing an FPS, for example, you're gonna notice that. Sprint cancel is something, if you're in the Call of Duty community or whatever, you might have heard that term before. So if you move forward and you press the button to sprint, but if you just slightly go off the center, or with TMR joysticks, it might go to the bottom a little bit when you press it in, your sprint just gets cancelled. So that's something you want to avoid. And with circularities like these, that can happen. So that's something that I actually found in 2 of my joysticks, is that it just doesn't fill the circle completely. And in 16, I kid you not, 16 out of 30 joysticks that I tested, I got some sort of result that, you know, it's very skewed to like one direction, like 9.7, it's all the way to the left. 10.9, this is the worst outlier that I found. And just several others that have like a very empty top right corner, which if that happens on, for example, the camera, the right joystick. So what you may notice is, I haven't tested it, so it's unproven, but that is my theory. The camera movement to one side is going to be slower than the camera movement to the other side, to the other side. So I think unconsciously this may still mess up your muscle memory, compared to if you have something like 9.2 here, which is symmetrical. But even then it's a bit higher. But as I said, it is a sample test. These numbers can change, so don't take these numbers, you know, as hard values. The other thing, the third, is not so much the symmetry, but the rotation. So clockwise and counterclockwise rotations. These are my raw numbers. So if I rotate clockwise just several times until the number doesn't change, I get a number of 9.2. If I rotate counterclockwise, I get 9.4%. And both directions, that's 9.7. So you're seeing here discrepancy between if I rotate counterclockwise or clockwise. Sometimes they're the same, 8.6, and sometimes they can change. For example, I'm trying to find the one that has like the biggest difference. I think that's like 0.2 difference. Or 0.3. This is the largest difference that I found. And this is actually what I want to show here. This is the 15th pair. If I show the clockwise and counterclockwise rotations, look, pay attention to this right here, the bottom right corner of the left joystick. This is a clockwise rotation, and you see it has a little overshoot. But once I rotate counterclockwise, it has more overshoot. And the same I can kind of say about the other 2 corners, is it changes depending on what direction I rotate the joystick to. So this is the third thing that I think is important to keep in mind of when you're calibrating joysticks, is if it's clockwise or counterclockwise, they should relatively be the same. They're never going to be exactly the same, but just, you know, somewhat the same. Because if you look at the right joystick, that's again looking a lot better. The left joystick, I don't like it. I find this a bad calibration. But this brings me to a discussion point, is things like this, the 7.4%, 10.1%, or this 10.9 crazy high percentage. These are stock calibrations. You can purchase one of these and you have a chance of getting 10.9%. Has anyone really thought twice about when they buy a controller? I just disconnected. Like when you buy a new controller is your first instinct, I need to calibrate this joystick because this is bad? I don't think many people do that. And it's like mid 2024, that's when calibration really became relevant, at least for DualSense controllers and DualShock 4 controllers. I just don't think that it really matters that much. So because these circularities, which have horrible symmetry and sometimes, like very high percentages, it has been the norm for like a decade now. And gamers didn't really think twice about it. And if you think that's just for casual gamers and maybe you're thinking of going professional, here's a message from Uber Micro Repairs. He noticed that SCUF controllers, they actually have like close to 15% percentage, and it's very bottom skewed. It's asymmetrical. But the SCUF controllers, they're mostly aimed at professional players. Whether it's your streamers or esport gamers, a lot of them play with SCUF controllers. Yet, I don't really see them talking about calibrating them because it's just the norm. People expect this. They plug it in and play with it. So does it really matter? In my opinion, it does not matter. It does have measurable benefit, and it may impact it like subconsciously, as it can influence your muscle memory, I think. But that's just a theory. This test, it doesn't really prove or disprove it in any way. And the reason why I bought DualSense Edge joystick modules instead of full-on controllers is just financially, it's cheaper. And the measurements of the joystick, the ring and the shaft, they're about the same. So here, if I compare like the ring around the joystick, the difference is only like 1/3 of a millimeter. And the shaft is even less at 0.05 millimeter. I only measured one pair of each, so there may even be some manufacturing differences, but I find the ring is also a bit more difficult to measure because of the shape. So I think this is also partially because of margin of error and just measuring it wrong. But yeah, I have this full report in the description. I'll just go over it on what my findings are. So again, it's a common misconception, lower is better, that this is false. It's proven to be false. You're going to notice issues in games, like sprint cancel in shooter games. And in Rocket League, I find it a really good example. I'll try to show a clip of it as well, is air dribble. In Rocket League is a technique to like rotate diagonally mid-air or something. I don't know. I really suck at Rocket League. I like playing it. So I'll just show a clip of it, of me trying to do it. And if you have a very low circularity, in Rocket League, you'll notice that you just have less control over the car when doing the air dribble, because you're going to have like, when you're trying to spin diagonally, it's not going to be as fast. I'll even use the Goody Kit controller because it has a setting to increase the dead zone, because it's all, again, as I said, it's all like kind of forced into the controller. It's not really calibration. So I can try it with like 0% circularity and one with 16% circularity, which is if you increase the sensitivity of these, you get kind of one full rotation plus maybe a quarter extra. So now with like around the 15% circularity, the jumps look different. And it's hard to show off again because I can't air dribble. But there is a noticeable difference because I've done this for like 10 minutes or something. There we go. This is something that you otherwise wouldn't get if you have 0% circularity. And I'm able to rotate just slightly more. So between the 8.3 and 9% circularity, that's just based on my findings of a sample test. It's very important, and I want to emphasize this. It's a sample test. There's only 30 joysticks, and there are millions joysticks and controllers out there. You're going to find different results if I have more joysticks or if I have a different set. So take these numbers with a grain of salt. It can be higher, it can be lower. I don't know. Based on my numbers, this is what I got. my lowest value was 7.4 and my highest was 10.9. Now, if this is a box plot, and this basically shows like 10.1 and 10.9. I showed you the 10.9 earlier. These two are outliers based on a specific method to calculate these based on the box plot. And 9.7 is like the highest normal value, and 7.4 is the lowest value, and there is no bottom outlier. So this is the range that I got in my testing, so between 7.4 and 9.7. And here, this blue region between 8.3 and 8.9 or 9%, that is the center 50%. That's the inner quartile radius. And with that, that's also my recommendation to sit between this interquartile radius. So that is where this number comes from. But it is a sample, so keep that in mind. And the way I tested it is, again, it's an upper bound. I rotated it in each direction just until the number doesn't change. That was my cat. I don't know if you heard him. I might need to feed him. So yeah, keep that in mind when you're calibrating your joysticks and comparing it to my numbers. All right, I'm going to feed my cat. Right, I'm back. My cat just got some food. So where was I? Here. 8.3 and 9%. Now you know kind of how I got that. And these screenshots, I also included it in the file just for completion and explanation why I used the DualSense Edge. Mainly financially, it's cheaper, and the numbers are just close to each other, so I don't think it matters that much. Now, here I kind of explained like circularity, the percentage isn't the full story. And here's just an example of why the circularity percentage, the number, it doesn't really tell the full story. 8.6%, it's right on the average. It's in the middle of the interquartile radius right here. Like, this looks great, but you can also have many different results of 8.6% that are terrible. You really don't want these calibrations. Now, the first three, I will say I kind of forced them just by not moving the controller all the way to the edge, like I just did this or something, and I got to 8.6%. Okay, I getting a guest appearance. Yeah, he has a box here, so he usually just sleeps there. The first three I kind of just forced, so that's like whatever, everyone can do that. But these two, these are genuine circularities that you can expect from stock controllers. So this is why I kind of included this, the first three as well, as just like an extreme example. And the last two, you know, these are numbers you can expect from stock controllers. Has it ever been an issue like 5 years ago? No, like no one really cared about it. They just played. Like you probably just bought a DualShock 4 controller, you plugged it in your PS4 and you played with it. But now that calibration is relevant, people are just a lot more like relevant, or they, how do I say it? People are just a lot more observant on what the percentage is and how does it look like, and is this good or bad, or they say their aim is off in games. And I think, again, I can't conclude this or prove it with this test, but I do think that placebo is also a factor. So it doesn't really matter that much. But also an interesting story is if you have a stock circularity that looks like this, which is very asymmetrical, I found that this same 10.9%, if I can find it here, during my testing, I also figured, like, okay, if so many of these are asymmetrical, I kind of had a second research question, which is it worth to calibrate stock controllers? And my answer to that is yes. This column is after, so I'll just zoom out a bit. So the first column is stock circularities, no calibration. Second one is I calibrate it, but I don't fine tune it at all. And then the third one is I fine tune it to improve the symmetry. From this 10.9, very skewed to the right side, I got a very symmetrical but very low percentage of 6.4. And then with fine tuning, I can increase it to 8.4. Now these numbers I also included right here. And you can see that I tried to keep the range the same, but if you could just compare this box plots with each other. This one has a very high distribution, and this one has a very low distribution, but it's also very low. Like the percentage is a low number. And I have another slide here, the graphs side by side. Here and here, they're very easy to compare with each other. But then I also have this third box plot. This is fine-tuned, so I have full control over the numbers. I would not necessarily say these numbers are representative because, again, take it with a grain of salt. I can manipulate these however much I want to. The only thing I proved with this fine-tuning is I can get it like right in between. So maybe if I insert a line right here, and there's like one outlier, but that doesn't really matter because 8.2 is, again, it's a guideline. 8.2 I still would consider completely fine. So knowing this, keeping this in mind, I'm able to get it in between my recommended range. But more importantly is if you just ignore the number and look at this 9.7, which was very skewed, I got it more symmetrical. And this 8.9, again, very skewed, it's perfectly symmetrical.
It was perfect.
With an 8.5 here. 10.9, I already showed you.
Perfect.
So this, number 6, it didn't reach the top. The bottom was very skewed. And here, perfect.
Everything, down to the last minute details.
For these two, again, the top barely had any overshoot, but it's stock, so kind of what you can expect from stock calibration. I was able to get it a bit more overshoot, 8.6%. The percentage on the right, it doesn't really matter. It's the shape of the circle that is what I wanted to show that you can actually achieve. And some other numbers. This one's a little bit asymmetrical, but I would say it's still fine. These two, no overshoot on top right. I got them symmetrical. This one again, very symmetrical from very skewed results otherwise. And those two, they were about the same. So what I actually showed here or proved with this fine-tuned testing is not so much the number, because I can change that however much I want to, but in worst case, I proved that the calibration, it doesn't matter. If it's already symmetrical, like 8.7, 8.6, excellent numbers, it's symmetrical in the corners, you're not gonna see an improvement. In best case scenarios, you will see that something like this, where it doesn't reach the top, suddenly has a very symmetrical shape. 10.9 as well. And that's how I answered my question that it, in most cases, I should say in most cases, where if it already has asymmetrical corners, it is worth it to calibrate your new controllers or your new joysticks. And I have some other graphs here, which, I mean, if you're into statistics, I can show them, but I won't really go over them that much. It's just a bell curve showing the distribution, stock, calibrated, and fine-tuned, and also 3 histograms. It's basically the same thing. I'm not really going to go over them, but I just added them there for completion if you are a nerd in mathematics like me. So I also have just some final numbers here if you're interested in that, and some final words. The main thing, the TLDR, is This has the number that we want, the stock circularity we want to get between 8.3 and 9%, or at least that's my recommendation. If we calibrated it, but without fine-tuning, we fix these asymmetries. The middle box plot, it has a very symmetrical circularities. It isn't really representative in the numbers itself, but you can see it in this sheet. But the issue of this one is that it's just too low circularity. And that's what we can fix with the fine-tuning. So the main takeaway is the TLDR. With fine-tuning, you can have the best of both worlds. You can have the number of stock circularities and the symmetry and the range of calibrated joysticks. And then the final thing, I think one of the more important discussions is, does it really matter if you calibrate new joysticks? This is assuming you're not installing new joysticks like TMR joysticks or Hall effect joysticks. If you're just calibrating new out-of-the-box controllers, doesn't matter should you do it. This test has insufficient evidence to actually prove that it is worth it. There is a measurable difference in testing software, but like as I said, it has been the norm for like a decade now to just buy a controller, plug it in, and play with it. And no one really looked twice at the calibration or at the circularity. And as the scuff also proves, is people are fine with just a very asymmetrical controller. Personally, I still think that it messes up with your muscle memory subconsciously. Like if you're in a camera movement and you have this 10.9, rotating to the right or looking to the right is going to be faster than looking to the left. And I personally think you may not even notice this. So these types of circularities, they have been the norm for a decade. And only because circularity calibration is now a thing, it doesn't make it any more relevant. So it's hard to justify saying that you now must calibrate your joysticks when they're just out of the box, just to play with them. Otherwise, they're unusable. I think that is a wrong. I think that's a wrong way of thinking it. But I do still recommend it because, again, there is a measurable difference. And I don't have sufficient evidence to prove or disprove whether this unconsciously still benefits you in-game. The only thing I proved is that I can measure it in testing software, not in games. And maybe that's something that I can test in a different future experiment. So yeah, I'm going to have this one in the description. Read through it if you would like to. I highly recommend it. I spent a lot of time in this. But I'm going to keep this video short, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.